Welcome back to the Long Horizon Show as we continue our conversation with Mr. Clifton Taulbert. I'm your host, Luke Fears. If you're just finding us, make sure you check us out on YouTube or follow us on your favorite social media or podcast platform. We hope you enjoyed this episode of our 4-part series with Mr. Clifton Taulbert. Mr. Taulbert, we're back from our break, and again, appreciate you giving us your time and wisdom here on this podcast. I was thinking, I was kind of thumbing through the book Once Upon a Time When We Were Colored Again, and there's a story about you fishing with Ma Punk.
Right.
Tell me, just tell me a couple stories maybe about, your memories. Was it Lake Washington, right? Mm-hmm. Right where you were? Mm-hmm. Tell me a few memories looking back.
When you look back, it's because there's great joy, great memories, or things were sad and you wish they'd been differently. And I would say most lives are probably a combination of both. But growing up with my great aunt, fishing was a major endeavor. It was not a sport. My friends asked me, "Cliff, do you like to fish?" No, because when we were fishing, it had become the grocery store. You had to fish in order to get food to eat. And so you go fishing every Saturday. I mean, the street be crowded with people going to Lake Washington to fish, not to have a party, but to catch catfish, garfish, buffalo fish, whatever. That was part of your meal. So you went fishing, but the thing about it, it extended community in a way that perhaps it would not have been otherwise. And from my perspective, the greatest gift that humanity can give each other is the gift of community. The ability to understand how my life matters in your life and your life matters in mine. And I think I saw that on those Saturdays when my great aunt had me digging up the worms and then getting the fishing poles down from the house. And you walk, you didn't very few cars, so you walk to the Lake Washington, which was uptown, almost out of the rim of where we live. But you'd always pick up 10 or 15 more people with their fishing gear and their grandkids and nieces and nephews on their way to Lake Washington and to find what they would call their lucky spot, because they had been doing this for years. And we found ourselves doing likewise. But and I don't know if I fully appreciated it when it happened, when it was part of my life. But, when I left home and became a soldier and all those things happened, you began to look back on those Saturdays going fishing. Wow, that was great. Great in that you caught fish, you had a meal, but to listen at the conversation and to see people so glad to see each other, live in the same town, but the lake became this commune table of conversation, and everybody would just kind of just put themselves into that whole deal. And that's one of the reasons why, just one, but I think that's one of the ways we were able to live with the reality of legal segregation and all it entailed, because we created community. And going on Saturday to catch fish, I mean, that was a pain to do that, but it was a pain that had reality attached to it. People were doing things together in order to accomplish a greater good.
That's great. What other rhythms or activities, added to that other than fishing?
Well, I would say, looking back, you didn't have a lot of what I would call commercial things to do. There was a park, but the park was off limit to me, so I couldn't go to the park. So you had to kind of figure out your own way. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that happened, just kind of happened, and in a wonderful way, was music. The blues had its birth in and around the Delta where I grew up. Mm-hmm. And people I knew Muddy Waters. Mm-hmm. I have sat at his feet at my great aunt's house when her front porch was turned to a place where all the blues singers would come. Wow. And they had no microphone, but you could hear those guitars a mile away. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were there, and I was just a little boy running around My great aunt and some of the men there would be frying catfish and light bread. You know what light bread is?
Light bread?
Light bread.
No.
It's amazing.
Okay.
I should charge you for telling you that. You don't know light bread?
No, what is that?
Well, light bread is the bread you buy in the store today, the packaged loaf of bread.
Okay.
It was called light bread because most of the people weren't able to afford 21 cents to buy a loaf of light bread. So they made their own bread. They had biscuits and cornbread.
Yeah.
And biscuits, bump, they hit the plate, and cornbread, bump, hit the plate. But a slice of bread, Wonder Bread, to be divided 8 ways.
Yeah.
That was called light bread because you could just kind of like float it up in your shop, just gently roll down in your plate. You didn't have that very often, but you had fish sandwiches. But Muddy Waters and the Singers, and they would be on my great aunt's front porch, just having until the moon came out.
Wow, that sounds like a fun party.
It was.
Yeah.
And it was in our world where we lived. I can remember 2 white families that lived across from my grandpapa's house, the Brown family. And then there was another family that lived across from Miss Shug's house. And they had a son that was about my age. And one Christmas, we both got BB guns for Christmas.
Nice.
I don't know why we got BB guns for Christmas, but we did. And we climbed up in the trees, and we were shooting people. I try not to tell that story frequently, but it was part of what happened.
Like something my sons would do. Yeah.
In that town, when there wasn't much to do collectively.
Sure.
You made things work for you.
You had fishing, you had music, picnics, churches.
And the church was a center point in Southern life.
I imagine.
Yeah. It was one of the few places. It was like a civic center. It was like I would say the front room of a hospital where you waited to be called upon. You're just sitting there waiting. The church was one of the few places within small communities in those days that was strictly under the auspices of the quote unquote the colored community.
Yeah.
No one else had anything to do with it.
Yeah.
So the churches were very, very important. Not only for weddings, for churches, for food. I mean, they'd always find a reason to bring food, and they called it the annual Sister Workers Day.
Okay.
And you see more food on those days than you would see your whole life.
Nice.
I mean, it I don't know where it came from, but boxes of it. And I know I had one aunt who didn't cook. And I don't know how she lived, but she didn't cook. But on the Sister Workers Day, she brought a brown bag full of food that was cooked. And I've often wondered, who cooked this food?
She's competitive. She wanted to put her pie in the competition or whatever.
Yeah. But it gave a people an opportunity to express their humanity.
Yeah.
In a world where they were not necessarily welcome.
Sure. The church was kind of like a safe space, so to speak.
That would be a good definition of safe space.
Kind of a little miniature town hall, almost as well. Yeah.
If you would. It was. I mean, are you sure you weren't there?
No, but I mean, I'm just trying to put myself back in in your shoes, and I mean, your grandpa was a minister as well. Right?
My great grandfather.
Your great grandfather. But even within, like, there's going to be different churches and different, Catholics or whatever denomination you might run into.
It was basically Protestant. There were Catholic churches in Greenville, which was a city, but not in Glen Allen.
Okay, interesting. How did the faith of the community and your community and impact how you were raised?
It was I can't even talk about Glen Allen without talking about faith, because the church was a central part of our lives. Like I said, as you said, a congregate gathering place, safe place to be, and so with that being said, all of those things that one wanted to do, the church would become the vehicle to make that happen. And for many of us, that's what we had to depend upon. And it shaped just about everything, sort of fed into that.
Yeah.
Or at some level of sociability, the church was a facilitator of opportunity and conversation.
Yeah, that's great. Well, yeah, thank you for giving me context here. And is there anything else that you can remember? Maybe a story from that era that you want to...
Oh, well, there's one other thing, too, that I'd almost forgotten until you pulled it out of me. Gently, though. That was nice to pull it out of me gently. We had schools. Our schools were all black. And, I knew that the white school was right behind my house. Maybe there was a field between our house and the white school. But the black schools where I attended, all of the teachers and principals and janitors and cooks, they were all committed to education. It was sort of like that's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
Your children going to school, your grandkids going to school. Miss Maxie was the first grade teacher. She ran for the longest time. She taught all 8 grades.
Okay.
In one building, one room, having divided by chairs. And that's where I went to school. And they seem to have been invested with the opportunity to discover what was in us and what we could accomplish. Because I would say 95% of the people that looked like me were field workers. It was the agrarian South, and cotton was the mainstay of all of our lives. And there were some who owned the fields, there were some who worked the fields. And, we often hear the term migrant field workers today.
Yeah.
But there were migrant field workers when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And we were the migrants.
Yeah.
They would come like 4:30 or 5 in the morning, big trucks, and pick you up and take you to the cotton fields. Then you work all day. And the same truck would bring you back home at night. But the fields weren't yours. You got paid for what you did. And then you'd come back the next day. But going back to the schools, on those days that you were working in the field, they would not have used the term strategy. But as I look back and do my own personal assessment, there were strategic moments in the cotton fields of the Delta when they were planning what they were going to do on Sunday, what programs they were going to, because if the calendar had a program on it, like a celebration, Easter, Hanukkah, or whatever it may have been, they felt they had to have a program for their kids. So I grew up having to learn, verses of poems and literature and stuff because I had to re-quote it. And every holiday was celebrated for the most part. The birth of Christ was a major celebration in our hometown. I had an uncle named Uncle Hurley. I just wish that he had lived long enough to realize that he could out-sing Sam Cooke. Uncle Hurley was just an incredible singer.
Okay.
And every Christmas he sang the same song. It came upon a midnight clear. Things like that he would sing. And of course, you would translate Glen Allen to the Middle East, which meant everyone had a towel wrapped around their head. And a bathrobe became the clothes as they were seen in pictures in the Bible and other places.
Okay.
Yeah.
You'd put on like a play or something like
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Fun. Okay.
We anticipated Broadway.
Yeah, that's awesome.
No, it was. But when I think about it, as the questions are being asked, I am remembering a world where life was, where life surrounded you, where life presented opportunities to you. And yes, legal segregation and racism were real. They were part of my world. But as I said earlier when we were talking, racism didn't live in our house. It didn't have a seat on our front porch. It wasn't at our church. It wasn't in our schools. So, the kids, our life was, what will tomorrow bring? Just to make sure we get that 12th grade education, because that was our ticket out.
Yeah, those are different days.
Yeah.
For sure. And it's a random question, but was electricity, like did you have electricity in your house growing up, or I mean, do you remember that process?
Yeah, we had electricity.
Okay.
But early on, it wasn't, I would say, it wasn't totally there for everybody. Not because electricity was not there. Many people didn't have the funds to pay. I think you had to pay $1.55 a month.
Yeah.
For electricity. And my great aunt, where I stayed, she had electricity, but she also had lamps in every room as well. And she was a very smart lady. She learned how to read the meters.
Yep.
On the electric meters.
Yep.
And when it got to a certain point, she knew that if it goes over that, she's going to have more than $1.55 to pay for the monthly use. So she would turn off the electricity. Or it's just, you couldn't use it.
What other like technological, we are 2025 and 26 were it's a different era.
Yeah, different time.
Yeah.
It's I don't think the food was that different, but maybe the preparation of the food would have been different.
Sure.
Because most people had wood stoves and things like that. You had to cut the wood and get it there and stuff like that. But I remember everyone had wash tubs. And then they had this one thing that it's like a flat board with, I think, metal covering somewhere. And you take your clothes and you rub it on this thing to get them clean.
Yep.
And then you get water and soak that in there, and then you rinse that out. Then you go and hang the clothes on the clothesline, which is outside the house in the yard. You do that. That was something that it lasted a long time. I mean, there were a few people, like the principal of the school. It was so funny because their world was almost like we call it the white world. They had like living rooms, dining room, just like that.
Yeah.
And I remember they first got a television.
Okay.
And I would say 99% of the people never had a television. Then 199% of them had never heard of a television to have.
Wow.
But the principal had a television, and I remember if something specific was going to come on that had an African American or black person involved in it, he would let us know. And as kids, we could come and sit out in that front yard, and they'd bring the television and put it in the door so you could watch it.
Wow.
On that. That was, I would think, cleaning and radio. And radio is not electricity for the most part. They were battery operated.
Yeah.
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 Because when I grew up, you could only get to station WDIA, which was out of, I think, Memphis, Tennessee. And then something in Del Rio, Texas, was out of the country western scene.
Okay.
You know, where I grew up, you really didn't make a big difference between country western and blues. I mean, I knew all the country western singers.
Yeah.
Because when the WDIA goes off, Del Rio, Texas goes on.
Yeah.
So you heard all the country western.
Well, it's funny, and nowadays we have a plethora of channels and options and songs, and you're pretty limited back then.
Very channel, but you didn't understand limitation if you had not seen more.
Sure.
So what was limited was not considered limited. It was just that's the way it is.
Yeah. What are any like events? Was it Joe Louis and any Jackie Robinson? Any sporting events or
everyone
things like that
except me play sports. Baseball is a major activity among the adult males in our hometown.
Okay.
And some of the baseball players, the ballot boys, they were known. They almost were being asked to play with the Negro League.
Okay.
They were really good in baseball, and you had softball as well. And eventually, when the big school was built, there was not the small room that Miss Maxey was the principal of everything. You actually had a legitimate principal, administrative people, teachers, etc.
That's when you're driving 100 miles round trip.
No. That's only grade school down.
Okay.
Grade school's in my town.
Sure.
From 1st to 6th.
Okay.
I believe. And then from 7 to 12, you had to drive. I had to go 100 miles round trip a day to get to that speed.
Wow. It's wild. Are there any other memories, from growing up that you want to share?
Let me see. You know, let's take a funeral. That's a sad conversation, but it was also an event that reconnected families. So many of our family members would leave after the 12th grade to get a better job or to get a good job and not be cotton for the next rest of their life. And they would go to places like St. Louis, Chicago, Detroit, not as many on the West Coast as most of the people in my world went to Chicago, Detroit, Indianapolis, places like that. And that's where they got jobs in the factories. And it was hard work, but they, in all likelihood, made more money than they ever seen in their life. It was, even that would have been small, but comparatively speaking, they would have been doing fairly well. And when someone passed away, especially an aunt or uncle or grandpa or something like that, a grandmother, all of those people would come home to the funeral.
Yeah.
And if someone passed away, the town got ready for this onslaught of family coming in. Different people were cooking this. I cook this, you cook that,
Okay.
you cook that.
Wow.
And Papa's house was fairly big. The house where I was born, where my mother was born, and where my grandmother was born. My great-great-great-grandfather had been born in slavery. And they had learned carpentry to really help to build the big mansions of the South. So their homes were not typical of what we call the shotgun houses that many of the people who look like me lived in.
Okay.
They actually had like bedrooms, living room, dining room. They built all these in their own house.
Wow.
On Ville. And so the families with the larger homes and with dining room, that would serve as the place where the food would be served. And for me, I could remember cousins coming, because you only see them once a year, once every 2 years, or once every 3 years when someone passed away for the most part. Now, some would come home for vacation during the summer, but funerals it was saying goodbye and also saying hello at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned a couple, I think, cousins and uncles that had one that became a doctor, and I know in the movie one of them came in from Detroit.
Right, that was my cousin Melvin.
Melvin.
Yeah.
Okay. So you'd see him, every 1 to 2, 3 years.
Yes,
And
he would come home because Melvin's mother raised me.
Yes. Wow.
And my pom. And so he would come home, not every year, sometime like every 4 or 5 years he would come.
And I imagine, because he's quite a bit older than you.
Oh, yeah.
And so here you are, a 13-year-old kid, seeing Melvin come in town, hearing his stories about how much money he's making. And
Well, the first thing he came home in a cab. That was major. I mean, the red top cab from Greenville, Mississippi.
Wow.
I wrote a story, an introductory story, a book called Shift Your Thinking.
Okay.
And I talk about the red top cab. I saw Highway 436 coming from Greenville to Glen Allen, Mississippi. Wow. I would be in the fields working with picking cotton or whatever. And you see the red top cab. And you knew it was bringing a black person from Chicago. You said, oh my God, who's coming home? But one thing that I do remember saying to myself, one day I'll be in the red top cab coming home.
Yeah.
Because in order to get the cab, use the cab, you had to pay quite a bit to get that trip from Greenville to Glen Allen.
Yeah.
So the indication that your cousins were coming in a cab from Greenville, where the bus station and the train station were located, they were able to pay for a cab to bring them home. That was another, not shared conversation, but an observation of possibilities.
That costs more than $2.50, and I know that someone's making $2.50 for chopping cotton over here. What? Yeah, that's do the math.
Yeah.
As a 15.
Now you would
yeah.
That would be kind of an indicator of what the possibilities were.
Wow, cool. And Little Clifton, as they call him in the movie, Little Cliff, grows up to become Mr. Clifton Taulbert, a world famous author, and now you're 80 years old. Um, you know, later I want to start asking you questions about, what, as now as an 80-year-old, what you would be advising, your 25, 30-year-old self. So I'm just teasing you on that question later, but I do want to go back and pick up where we left off in our previous session. Kind of late 90s, early 2000s. The movie's been released. How old would you be in the year 2000? You're
2000, let's subtract 45 from 2000.
Yeah, you're 55 years old-ish. 60 years old, somewhere in there. There is what's going on in your life at that time? Is that when the 8 Habits of the Heart comes out, or do I have my timeline right there?
No, it would have come out much later, 8 Habits, because Once Upon a Time came out, and it lasted. It sort of had a time period by itself for a while before I would write another book.
Okay.
Because I think 8 Habits, not 8 Habits, but Once Upon a Time came out. After that, The Last Train North. Then after that, Watching Outcrops Come In. Then after that, 8 Habits of the Heart.
Okay. So, 8 Habits of the Heart. Let's talk about that. I'm gonna grab this book and show it. This version is for educators. Let's talk about like the contents of this book and where this came about.
Well, 8 Habits of the Heart was my attempt to capture the sense of community that lived within the academic environments of our lives while growing up on the Mississippi Delta during that period of time. And what I was trying to bring out and to show, there are some things in life that are not held captive by race, gender, or geography. And I'm looking at the habits that drives us and to do and accomplish what we do. Those habits, like nurturing attitude, it will always be about the unselfish use of time, whether it's 30-23, 20-25, or 1964. I wanted these 8 habits to be recognized as a template of opportunity to bring community into the lives of those you encounter as a family, as a teacher, as a student in the field of academia, or whether you're working in a plant, a factory, understanding that there are things that we can do from one life to the other that mitigates the challenging situation that one could potentially face. So the 8 habits are really concepts of people that I have brought together, given them one person to be reflective of this. But as the conversations are discussed, I remember being invited to China to talk about the 8 habits of the heart. And I realized once I got there that when we were describing nurturing attitude, it looked the same way in China as it did in Glen Allen. And I began to clearly understand that the 8 habits of the heart are tools that one can bring into their lives in order to positively impact the lives of others on a regular basis.
Okay, so let's go through the 8 habits. You said nurturing attitude.
That's the first habit of the heart.
That's the first habit of the heart.
Then you would have responsibility.
Okay.
That's the habit of the heart. That's where you show and encourage people to be their best. But you are involved in that learning process. It's heads on, heart on, hands on. That's responsibility.
Okay.
Dependability is being there for others throughout all the times of their life. A steady influence. Mm-hmm. And the operative word is steady.
Yeah.
Many people can do something for a season or for a moment in time. But in order to maximize our life on the planet and to leave a legacy of who we have become and what we have brought to others, dependability becomes the habit of the heart, of the steadiness of what we do, and how important it is not to just think you're going to get everything done in one day or 1 hour. To build community is to commit your life for the rest of your life. Dependability, then that's friendship. Friendship is the habit that binds people together. When they take pleasure in each other's company, they listen to the good times and the bad. That takes effort to be friendship. And it is not going to happen automatically. We have to do something on a consistent basis to bring it about. That's what I encountered in my school, Glen Allen Elementary School and O'Bannon High School. Those were the two academic institutions where the teachers were very reflective of the 8 habits of the heart. It was not just the fact of education, but it was the fact of living and sharing your life. And the importance of that. You got, then of course you got high expectation.
Yeah.
High expectation is so important because, and I was exposed to high expectation while growing up on the Mississippi Delta during the era of legal segregation, is where I encountered high expectation. Where did it come from? The house that I lived in, that's one place. The people that lived next door to me, the Ballard family, another set of people. People that lived on the other side, the Brown family, another set of people. People always wanting the best for you, always pushing you to move further up and to get this done and to get that done. And in the book, I tell the story of the man that we call the Old African that lived in a place called the Colored Colony that was established after the Civil War.
Okay.
And by my time, it had become, the land was owned by black people, and they had their cotton fields there as well. But this one man, the preacher Hearn, we call him the Old African, he would, every week or two, he would walk from his home into Glen Allen because we couldn't go to the library. Glen Allen had one library, but it was not open to us. So books that he would have gathered from the homes of the wealthy white plantation owners, they would have thrown books away and magazines. He'd get all that and bring it to his house. And on the weekend, he would put his satchel filled with books. And he'd walk into Glen Allen where we lived. We were probably shooting marbles or playing Indian and Cowboys or whatever, because those were the two games that we played more frequently. Or you play ball, and you'd have to stop. And he would have with this ad hoc instruction. And I guess Emily Dickinson said it best. There is no frigate like a book to take you to places you have never been and to people you've never known and places you've never seen. And that's what the old man would do. He would read books to us.
Cool.
Giving us an idea that there was a world beyond Glen Allen and there were opportunities beyond Glen Allen. And that was high expectation is the idea of expecting others to do well, showing them how to do well, assist them in the process of doing well, and when they accomplish, celebrate, and then go to the next step of learning. It's never a done deal. You do this until you leave this planet. And that's why the 8 habits of the heart is a rating that goes to corporation use it around the world. 8 habits of the heart for educators had its debut at Harvard Graduate School of Education.
Wow. And that's where you gave lectures.
That's where I gave lectures.
Okay.
For 4 summers, like lecturing at Harvard.
Concerning the 8
habits of the heart.
Wow, that's really good. Yeah, I couldn't help but think of the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. I mean, you're describing a village and the characteristics that the village has. I really like the high expectations.
And then, of course, there's courage.
There's courage and hope. Yeah. That was really good.
Yeah, those were the latter two of the habits. And courage, it's the ability to, through your observation, to observe what is needed, what should be, and as best you can, how can you participate in that process of bringing about change and making things better. It's just like a garden. If you allow your garden to grow weeds on the same place where the beans are being grown and everything else, the weeds begin to overtake the beans. Yeah, if you're not out there with your rake and hoe, taking care of your plants. They were eaten up by the negativity of the bush, of the weeds that would just sap the life out of the potatoes. You got to leave the potatoes to maximize their potential. You got to get the weeds out of the way. And it takes courage sometimes to get the weeds out of the way.
Absolutely.
And hope, that's where your heart does its talking. Your eyes are more than just what you see. It's what you dream about, what you hear about, is what you sing about. You know, Sam Cooke, some of his most famous songs, even if they were blues, love songs, etc., but they all spoke to another day coming. You know, and there's a song called I was born by the river in a little tent, but I know that at one day a change is going to come. They sang that song when I was growing up, and every time I turn on something on the internet, I'm hearing it again. You know, so every aspect of your life becomes an opportunity to make yours and others better.
Yeah, that's really good. And giving kids especially hope.
Yeah.
You know, I studied psychology in college, and there's an interesting dynamic called learned helplessness. And basically you just give up. You're like, I can't do anything about it. And it's kind of that victim, there's nothing I can do. And you just kind of turn, what's the word, nihilistic or nihilistic. And hope, especially in schools, just seems like such an important thing.
There's a organization that was started by Mike Donald. Mike Donald Douglas Aircraft.
Okay.
One of the CEOs of McDonald, Sandy McDonald, created a board in Washington, D.C., which I served on for a number of years. It had to do with character education. You know, how do you keep the life of the village alive?
Sure.
And so they often use 8 Habits of the Heart. And I was just asked to write an article for publication in Washington some point in time, the next couple of weeks, called Life from the Front Porch.
Okay.
And I just got a note from the lady who's over. Now, Sandy McDonald unfortunately passed away, but he was the major force behind bringing character education back into schools and also bringing it into corporations as well. That's how to create an environment that allows each person to maximize their best and to really stretch their potential, looking for the best.
Yeah. So again, thinking about the chronological and the timeline, you're dealing with tragedy and now fame, extra fame perhaps because of the movie. I don't know. You're going through that journey, and then it seems like 8 Habits of the Heart comes in the midst of that, or at the end. You're grieving, you're learning, and then somehow you have the ability to have a good attitude when you feel hopeless or whatever.
Well, I mean, it's very difficult to come to a straight line question like that because it's so, life is so not a straight line.
Sure.
And, but I would say the 8 Habits of the Heart really came to me in a very unusual way. I was lecturing in Frankfurt, Germany. In fact, I was lecturing in the hunting lodge that had been built for Adolf Hitler.
Oh, wow.
On the 8 Habits of the Heart. And it wasn't called the 8 Habits of the Heart then. It was called Building a Solid Community.
Okay.
And I talked about habits that would be needed for that. And on my way to my lecture, I said to myself, I need a title for this talk. And then I went through my books and I said, I'm talking about 8 people. That's who I've identified to represent this. I said, it's their hearts. Then all of a sudden it just dawned on me. I said, I'm going to introduce as 8 Habits of the Heart.
Nice.
And so I introduced it conceptually in Frankfurt, and it stuck with it. The people, I was working for the Department of Defense at the time, at the schools that the Americans founded for the children of the military.
Sure.
The DOD schools. And I worked a lot with their leadership and a lot about how to build and sustain community. So 8 Habits of the Heart was developed in that period of time.
Yeah, when you talk about community, in today's America, or at least my experience of it, we're so individualistic, and we go off in our little homes and we shut the garage door before we get out of the car instead of waving at the neighbor like you're talking about. You know, you get young kids and, you're so busy with your young kids, you're not, engaging with other people. So I see where schools today are so important for providing a sense of community and providing that. What else is you kind of, I know it's high level, but as you analyze American culture today and you compare it to your upbringing, I mean, you make your upbringing almost sound nice in the legal segregated South,
Yeah, that was the surroundings of my life may have been challenging.
Sure.
But the interior of my life, I was very fortunate.
Yeah.
I can't imagine being who I am today had I not become who I was yesterday.
Sure.
And the people who made that a reality. From the people that raised me to the cousins that I knew to the people that were no kin to me but thought as if they were. In those days, I often laughed with friends on cousins. I said, in the South, I don't know about white Southerners, but black Southerners, your 100th cousin is just as important to you as your first cousin.
Okay.
You don't
you don't distinguish between the two.
No. And Marshall, my son, always laughs when he goes home. How many cousins do we have, Dad? I said, you got a lot of cousins.
That's good. So, yeah, I mean, you got a big family, you're running in and out of your neighbors' homes. Your neighbors are taking an interest in you, feeding you, taking you to school and things like that. And, again, I almost wish we had more of that today. Like, sure, some people create that, but it's a very different world today.
It is. Those were critical times, very important times. And that's why I think even today, 8 Habits of the Heart, my first book, is just as important today as it was, I would say, 15 to 20 years ago when I wrote it.
Sure.
I was talking with someone a couple of days ago that's related to, I think, Williams Company. And I hope I'm not repeating myself on that, but someone has shown her 8 Habits of the Heart. And she said, I just reread mine a couple of days ago. And I just was so amazed that this conversation, I'm not there. And they're talking about the 8 Habits of the Heart. It has withstood the test of time.
Yeah. You're bringing all of the wonderful things of your upbringing, the community element, and you're sharing that message to today's today's America. So yeah, that's really great because I think, need more nurturing attitude and courage to, say something to a child or pick some weeds, as you said, and maintaining a good culture and a good community. So,
no, we all have that opportunity to do that. And I know I raised Marshall that way. And when he went out to LA, I remember one of his bosses, supervisors, whatever, in the film industry, he called me one day and he said, Mr. Taulbert, he said, I just want you to know you've raised a good man in Marshall. He said, I didn't even know my name was Mr. Passamonte until Marshall came to town. He said, he sticks his head out the door and I pass his office. Mr. Passamonte, how are things going today, sir? He said, I just come back by his doors 2 or 3 times a day so I could hear that.
Nice.
But it was the respect for an older person, his boss, just because he was his boss and provided an opportunity for him to be making money that he needed to live in LA. And he was respectful of that. but that's the way we had taught him because that's the way I was taught. And it just goes down to the next generation, you know. And I know that Marshall loved tennis shoes, and to a fault. And he said one day he was driving down Wilshire Boulevard. He saw an older lady with no shoes on, but she was walking. He said, "Dad, I knew the country was hot." So I pulled up in front of her and asked her, would she accept a pair of shoes? And she didn't need it. And then he said, "Well, it is pretty hot." So he said he opened the trunk of his car and he he had just bought a pair. She said, "It fit her perfectly." He said, and I gave it to her and she waved at me by and I waved at her. Left my new shoes on her feet. He said, "Then I call you to tell you so we'd have something to be happy about."
I'm more generous than I am, maybe.
He doesn't let me forget Glen Allen.
Yeah, I bet.
If anything happens that reminds him of Glen Allen, he'll tell you. He said, "Daddy, that's from back home." And he's so funny.
So it seems like you guys have such a great relationship, you and your son.
I think we do. I'm very fortunate. I love my son, and he loves his parents. We talk all the time.
That's inspiring. That's really neat. I hope, I've got younger kids. I hope when they're in their 40s, they want to call me now too. So
make sure they don't let any time separate you.
Yeah.
Then you won't have no problem.
Yeah. That's good.
Don't give your children to the schoolhouse to raise. Raise your own children and let the school support what you do.
Okay. That's good. What other parenting advice do you have on that vein?
Always try to have your children seeing you being grateful for your life and being willing to share with someone else. Because Marshall said he won't have an inheritance because we won't have anything. He said we were giving it all away. If there's anything to give away, I said, well, and then you would have learned the lesson.
Okay. So generosity, gratefulness.
Yeah. And to live that out in the presence of your children and make them part of it.
Yeah.
Don't make it like a major deal. Make it like it's normal. It's every day.
Yeah.
Because I know Marshall will tell people in L.A., if you go through Tulsa, call Dad. Call my dad. They'll feed you. I said, "How you know we have food, Marshall?" He said, "Oh, come on, you have food." And he'll tell them. And you'll get calls from people said, "We know Marshall." He said, "Come by your house." And I said, "Okay, I'll be in and pick you up."
That's awesome. That's awesome. Barbara is a great cook.
Yeah, Barbara's a great cook. And Barbara was raised a little differently than I was. I had to realize as a married person, I can't make decisions to bring people home without having cleared it with my wife.
Yeah, sure. You and I talked off camera earlier about some unlikely friends you've made, and thinking about folks you've invited to your house or dinners that you've had or interactions. Who are some unlikely characters in your life or who have been in your life as an adult?
As an adult, one life that I'll always remember because of the great graciousness of her heart, that is Chief Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, to become a friend and just watching that friendship grow. And when she invited me to speak at the Library of Congress, and then she had invited 150 of their guests the Supreme Court had. Wow. And to be introduced by Justice O'Connor as her friend.
Wow.
I will always remember that because she didn't make it seem as if that was the best thing that had happened to me. She made it seem as the best thing that happened to the both of us, our paths to have crossed.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that. And, and one friend, he's deceased now. And I only say this because in all likelihood, our social lives were so different. There would be no reason for our paths to really cross and a friendship be developed. But I was in Houston, Texas, on my way to Dallas. And the plane was full, almost ready to take off. Then this older gentleman came on the plane, just tons of boxes and stuff. And nobody would help me, try to get situated. So I got up and help him get settled. And then I'm coming find he was sitting right by me. So we just sat there and talked in the plane, took out. We had a great conversation, but it was about nothing because we hadn't even introduced ourselves. We were just talking about the plane, the life, the boxes and stuff like that. You know, it was gracious, but it wasn't substantive type conversation. But then he gave me his business card. And that was when I realized I was talking to Eric Hilton. And our friendship developed from that, unlike the day that I helped him store boxes. And we'd call and talk to each other, and his secretary, administrative assistant, I could hear her on the phone said, "Oh, say Eric, your friend Clifton is on the line," and that was so cool. That was so very cool. And then he'd write letters, and I had forgotten that because that's been so long ago. And I was cleaning out one of my boxes of junk, and a letter with Hilton came up, but I was thinking in terms of, I had forgotten the friendship because he passed away for a while. And I thought it was like Hilton honors sending me a letter. Yeah. And it was a letter that Eric had written me. I never remember getting that. Wow. But he was talking about the movie. He had met the people in D.C. that was going to be producing Once Upon a Time. And he was just on and on. Just a great letter. And I said, God, I sure hope I answered it. But anyway. No, it's just the people that I have met, everyday, incredible, wonderful people. Just, it's been a blessing.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and I know, knowing you're a gracious person, you're a generous person, you live out the habits of the heart from my perch, and so it's fun to be around guys like you that are generous and willing. And then when did you start Roots Java Company? Probably,
I would say maybe 10 years ago.
Okay.
10 years ago.
Okay. So the ripe age of 70, you're starting businesses. I think Colonel Sanders has a story kind of like that too. That's really cool. So you're still kicking it. And I mean, when other people are putting their feet up on the desk, you're hustling. I love that. You keep, hustling. Tell me kind of, again, a snapshot of the last 25 years here for the last 5 minutes.
I've always, and I got from my great uncle Cleve on the ice house when I worked for him, that settled in me that one day, without any great thought, I would always own a business. I just knew that. I remember when he would take me to the bank with him, to Greenville, to the First National Bank, and because of his color, he couldn't go in the front door of the bank, so we had to go through the back doors. And he had a passbook saving account, and he couldn't touch the hands of the clerks, so he had to put the passbook, slide it under a little metal deal that went up and down. And I said to myself, one day, I want to have part ownership of a bank so that my uncle will not have to come through the back door. And got the National Bank of Oklahoma, that the Bennett family founded. It's the big bank out in the Jinx as you cross over. My wife and I were earlier investors in that bank.
Wow.
And I told my uncle, with tears in my eyes, he's just deceased for years, I said, you don't have to wear the back door anymore.
Wow. How old were you when you first had that dream?
I was out of school, out of high school, out of the military, because Uncle Cleve was there whenever we went in the Air Force, as his son had done before me, Joe, my cousin. And I'm thinking I was around like 17, 18.
Wow. That's really, really cool.
Because I became involved early on in banking.
Yeah.
Which was really kind of a strange involvement.
Didn't you say you were one of the first black guys to go through the banking school?
the banking school in St. Louis Institute of Banking.
Okay.
I was among the first black to grow to that school.
Wow.
And because the bank, Jefferson Bank and Trust, hired me to work for them, which ended the civil rights movement in St. Louis. St. Louis had been slowed down, period.
Okay.
No one was doing anything. Everybody was in the streets, marching. They were building the arch. The arch had closed down. It had not been built. It stopped. I mean, downtown St. Louis was just like, until they got the banking issue solved. Well, when they hired me, that solved the banking issue. And the St. Louis opened up. On the day I was hired was the day St. Louis opened up.
So explain more. This is curious. There's like a protest going on.
There's a huge protest.
Huge protest. And
throughout
the fact that he hired you, word spreads, bank hired a black guy. And so then that calmed the rioting?
It ended.
What? That is so cool. How did all these steps, how are you in the midst of this? What's going on? How'd you get this job?
Well, I went to an agency, and not for that job. I didn't know a job. I didn't know anything. I didn't know why people even marching. But I just got there from Mississippi, so all of this is new to me.
Oh, wow.
But I went to an employment agency, and I didn't have a resume, because you don't have to have a resume to pick cotton.
Yeah.
So I didn't have that. And I graduated valedictorian of my class, but that didn't mean much to them. They're in St. Louis and Glen Allen, Greenville, Mississippi. What does that really mean? It may not mean anything. You don't have a transcript or nothing like that. We don't have any job openings. And so she got up and left in with another young man was there. And I left. And when she left, he came to the window and knocked on the window. And he told me to wait. I could read his lips say, wait. And he came to the door and he kept looking back. He said, when my boss leaves, this is a car. Come back in here. There is a job opening. And I will fill the paperwork out for you.
Wow.
And I don't know that kid's name, but I will never forget that. He filled the paperwork out for me, got the job, which ended up being the job at Jefferson Bank and Trust. The job that I got as a Glen Allen, Mississippi person from the cotton fields of the Delta that ended up ending the civil rights movement in St. Louis.
Wow. So you've been... This is like a Forrest Gump story.
That's what Marshall calls me, Forrest Gump.
I mean, you're in these places in critical times, and you're, it seems like, have been a calming voice in the midst of conflict as well.
I had no voice. It's just my prayer. And I got it. And my job was I drive I worked between the bank and not the FDIC, but what do you call them? Where you take canceled checks. There's a name for that place that you take those canceled checks to every day.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that I did. And I also would drive Mr. Ross to lunch, which I thought was the crazy. I learned to drive on the dirt roads of the Mississippi Delta. Now I am driving the president of Jefferson Bank and Trust to the Playboy Club every day for lunch.
So that's crazy. Wow. In downtown St. Louis.
In downtown St. Louis. Oh. And he's just as comfortable sitting in the back seat reading the Wall Street Journal. Oh my gosh. And I'm in the front seat praying that I don't kill the both of us.
Oh, that is an excellent story. Well, hey, that's probably where we're at time-wise, I think. And so to end this section, and again, thank you for telling us your whole life story. We're going to have one other interview after this break, and we're going to get more in, the meat of some topics and have a chance for you to share more of your message. So excited about that. And stick around. We'll see you in a bit.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us on this journey towards the long horizon. If you haven't yet, make sure to check us out on YouTube or follow us on your favorite social media and podcast platforms. We here at the Long Horizon Show are focused on building community. If you know someone who's seeking wisdom or could benefit from a community like ours, make sure to share this episode.